thought dead after being ripped in half and thrown into space by the Sentry, spawn of Venom and psychotic serial killer Carnage returns and gives birth to a new symbiote in Carnage Family Feud. What's up guys, Roman from RNS Entertainment here, and welcome to Comic History, the weekly series where I retell, explain, and give context to the iconic storylines, origins, and events in the world of comics. In today's episode, we're going to be covering an important moment in symbiote history, namely the return of Cletus Kasady, aka Carnage, to the Marvel Comics universe after his apparent death in Brian Michael Bendis' New Avengers, which sees the Sentry fly Carnage into space and rip him in half before leaving him there for dead. Carnage would remain dead for 8 years until he finally makes his return to wreak even more untold chaos in Carnage Family Feud by Zeb Wells, with art by one of my personal favorite symbiote artists, Clayton Crane. As a 5-issue miniseries, Family Feud not only brings Carnage back to the comics, but utilizes Carnage's girlfriend Shriek and the spider Doppleganger from Maximum Carnage. Along with taking a note from the Venom vs. Carnage miniseries, and taking the opportunity for Carnage to spawn a new symbiote character in Tanis Neves, aka Scorn. If you want to learn more about Carnage's history in the comics, check out my Spider-Man Symbiotes History playlist or Comic History playlist, where I've covered other iconic stories like the origin of Carnage, Venom vs. Carnage, where Carnage gives birth to its first symbiote spawn, Toxin, and of course the epic 90s crossover event Maximum Carnage, among plenty of others. Our story begins with an armored truck being chased through New York City by a civilian vehicle attempting to run it off the road. What appears to be Spider-Man swings in pursuit, but then an extra arm spinning webs reveals that it's actually the Doppelganger, one of many evil antithesis characters created in Marvel's Infinity Wars. Following his creation, Doppelganger would quickly meet the Demo Goblin before being reintroduced in the 14-part crossover event Maximum Carnage, quickly becoming devoutly loyal to Carnage's girlfriend Shriek and seemingly being killed by Carnage during the event. In actuality, Doppelganger isn't even technically alive and is fairly impossible to kill. Meanwhile, Iron Man, in his civilian identity of Tony Stark, attends a medical technology expo featuring a would-be rival tech developer named Michael Hall, who reveals that he has integrated organic components into specialized circuits that allow prosthetics and other robotic suits to read the thoughts of the human they're connected to on a level that current technology could never allow. He demonstrates this by accidentally flipping Tony Stark off with the prosthetic arm, eliciting a big laugh from the crowd. Leaving the expo, Tony makes a quick call to Pepper Potts, asking her to look into Hall's new technology, but is quickly interrupted by the armored car chase with a 6-armed Spider-Man swinging behind it. Donning his armor and calling the real Spider-Man, who alongside Iron Man is currently an Avenger at this point in the comics, Tony asks Peter how many arms he currently has, and then tells him to meet him in the city now. Peter, who was taking a rare moment to relax and watch television, swings through the city while attempting to keep eating his bowl of cereal, which I think they only included so that Clayton Crane could do a digital painting of Spider-Man eating cereal swinging through the city. The armored truck chase continues, with the men driving initially thinking that Spider-Man had landed on their windshield, until they see the mouth and extra eyes. The truck slams on its brakes, causing the pursuing car to ram into the back of it and giving Iron Man enough time to catch up. Iron Man's armor is entirely unable to identify what Doppelganger even is, and is unable to translate the garbled noises that Doppelganger has been repeating, which over time have gone from vague growling to words like Marvar and Marmar. Tony confronts Doppelganger, who fires his trademark razor webbing, which is sharp enough to damage Iron Man's armor and allow Doppel to leap away. Spider-Man finally shows up, and when Iron Man describes the Doppelganger, Spider-Man immediately recalls the horrors of Maximum Carnage, where Carnage, Doppelganger, and a host of other villains had wreaked havoc across New York City, murdering countless people themselves and also inciting large-scale riots with the powers of Carnage's girlfriend Shriek, which made the people of the city violently murder each other. As Spider-Man finishes recounting his story to Iron Man, he realizes that an identical angry mob has formed up behind them, charging them and screaming for murder. The driver of the car chasing the armored truck, who would later be introduced as Tanis Neves, manages to crawl out into the street, begging the drivers of the truck to stop as they plan on driving through the mob to escape. With Spider-Man and Iron Man temporarily overwhelmed by the mob, Doppelganger swings back down from the buildings and kneels beside Tanis, repeating the word Marvar as he prepares to rip open the armored truck with his razor webs. Suddenly, the mob fight is broken up by two men in full Iron Man-esque prosthetic suits designed by Michael Hall, declaring that the crowd is interfering with the transportation of trade secrets, while using distinctly symbiotic tendrils to web up entire groups of the riot. Doppleganger holds the truck as it tries to speed away, still screaming words that Tanis realizes sound like mother. Seeing that Doppleganger is a non-human organism, one of the symbiote-suited men fires a repulsor blast with lethal force, which ends up severing Tanis' arm as she jumps forward to save Doppleganger. The armored truck speeds away with Tanis mutilated and Doppleganger sliced completely in half from the blast. The top half of Doppleganger tries to crawl after the truck, repeating the word mother until it chokes and apparently dies. And with the truck gone, the murderous mob returns to normal. Back at Michael Hall's facility, the drivers of the armored truck remove their captive, which of course is revealed to be Frances Louise Barrison, aka Shriek, Carnage's psychotic girlfriend and Harley Quinn allegory from Maximum Carnage. The men wheel her forward on a stretcher, saying that Hall's biological payload that he had been using to create his technology and supersuits required massive amounts of fear and hatred, which Shriek's powers happen to constantly emit to survive. Silent and visibly scared, Shriek looks up to see the Carnage symbiote suspended in a giant tank before her, not connected to Cletus Kasady, but very much alive. And that is where we are going to leave off on part 1 of Carnage Returns, which I will be covering in 3 parts over this week and the next 2 weeks. I want to start doing bigger storylines, events, and crossovers in comic history, and to do that I plan on having more multi-part stories taking the spotlight over one-and-dones for the foreseeable future, starting with Carnage Returns over the next few weeks, and then moving on to another multi-part story which will keep going after that. Next week, we'll have part 2 of Carnage Returns titled She-Carnage, where Tanis Neves is temporarily bonded with the Carnage symbiote, before part 3 the week after that, where we'll see her take her proper place in the origin of Scorn, Daughter of Carnage. I personally find Tanis herself an interesting character, and Carnage Family Feud is a totally fun and well-drawn Carnage mini that brings back the best characters from Maximum Carnage while returning our favorite symbiote serial killer back to the Marvel Universe. So I'm excited to finally be covering it on Comic History. If you enjoyed this video, make sure to give it a thumbs up, leave me a comment, subscribe to RNS Entertainment for weekly content, and check out my Spider-Man Symbiotes History and Comic History playlist for more great stories like this. Also, follow my social media and other channels via the links in the description below, and if you want to help support the channel, check out my Patreon at patreon.com/rnsentertainment. As for this week, I'll be back on Wednesday for a live episode of Today in Comics, and then on Friday, I'll be doing a big return episode of the Whiskey and Comics podcast. So tune in for those and be on the lookout for She-Carnage on Comic History next Monday.